Okay, welcome everyone. This regular meeting of the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee will now come to order on May 10th, 2018 at 7 p.m. Just a note to the audience, this meeting is being both audio and video recorded, and are there any members of the audience recording this meeting? Seeing none, we'll continue on. At this moment, all who are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is right over there. On the west side. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent, please take roll.
Dr. Caprice? Yes. Ms. DiTomaso?
Yes.
Mr. Farley? Mr. Gazzillo?
Here.
Mr. Hagmeyer, I don't see. Mr. Hagmeyer's not here. Is he? Wait. I just heard. Mr. Hagmeyer, are you in the audience? Mr. Hopper is here. Ms. Keefe is not here. Mr. Locatell?
Here.
Mrs. Latazori? Here. Didn't see Mr. Less. Mr. Peters, I saw.
Mr. Less will not be here.
Okay, Mr. Less will not be here. Mrs. Tucker? Here. Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Amercost?
Here.
We have an open seat in Washington. Mr. Bartels is here.
Here.
Hello. Our CBA rep is not here tonight, and our student rep, Isaac, is here. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Chair certifies this agenda is valid in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25. And at this time, we'll hear responses from the audience. Would anyone like to address the committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Student Affairs, Zach, you have the floor.
So in sports, and with just 3 weeks left in the spring season, Clint had wins just about across the board this past week. And one I didn't quite get to find out about before I left, but the boys lacrosse game was finishing up right when I was leaving. So it was a close game, and I kept seeing tweets about it. But the unified track team had a meet yesterday, and they actually have a home meet 4 o'clock on next Wednesday. So it's a really great event. I recommend seeing it if you can. We're right in the middle of the AP exams with the chemistry, physics, English, literature, and government exams have done over, or have been taken already. And the biology, calculus, English language, statistics exams all next week, so good luck to everyone in those. Seniors just have 5.5 days left of school. And then the week after that, the week of the 21st, is finals week for them. And then just after that is senior week with all the class trip to Boston, and senior Sunday and graduation the next Sunday. So it's really getting to the hook. And then even though we're out of school, we've got a lot of stuff going on. So it's really exciting. A lot of people are getting ready. And we also have Hannah Perlt here, who will be taking over with me next year. So, yeah.
Welcome, Hannah.
Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Does anyone have any questions for Zach? All right, I understand this is your last meeting with us. Okay, well, thanks for your service over the year. I'm very happy that you participated in many of the meetings. You're here for most of the meeting, and that's a good thing. So I, with Hannah, will encourage that you do the same. And certainly, if you want to be have any opinions that you'd like to put forward when we have topics that come up, that's going to be welcomed as well. You have a voice on the committee.
Yes,
Okay.
and this is for you, Zach. And I have known Zach for a while. We met on a Latin trip when you were a freshman, right?
Yeah.
That long ago. So I just want to thank you very much and congratulate you. This is a big role to take on, to sit with 15 adults that you don't know that well, myself in the administration. And I just remember when I met you as a freshman to think that you joined us this year in this capacity, and now you're moving on. Where did you decide on UMass?
I decided on UMass.
Congratulations. So
Amazing.
it's been really progression and talk about a success. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Greg has the box if you'd like that for the car ride home.
Okay, Okay, thanks again, Zach, and congratulations. Next order of business is Secretary's report. Would a member please make the motion to accept the minutes of the meeting of April 26th?
Move to approve the minutes for the regular meeting of April 26, 2018 as printed.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of the meeting of April 26th. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Next is warrants. Would a member please make the motions for the warrants?
Move to approve warrant number 2018-41 dated May 11, 2018. Accounts payable in the amount of $311,295.28.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve warrant number 2018-41. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention, the motion carries.
Move to approve warrant number PR 2018-44 dated May 3rd, 2018. Payroll in the amount of $573,82.29.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve warrant number PR-2018-44. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? One abstention, the motion carries.
Move to approve warrant number 2018-144D dated May 3rd, 2018. Accounts payable in the amount of $106,540.62.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve warrant number 2018-44 Delta. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? One abstention, the motion carries.
That's the end of this paper.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lackawanna. All right, under the report of the chair, we have still a vacancy in the town of Washington. Also, the next two topics I'm going to turn over to the superintendent. They are status of the Wacona Regional High School bathrooms and also the Nessicus Middle School parent concerns from our 26 April meeting.
So start with the Wacona bathroom. So hopefully everyone was able to read through the letter that I had sent to Mrs. Town, thanking her for bringing those concerns to our attention. Several of those concerns we had a plan in place for and were ultimately resolved. A couple of them we put a plan in place for and will be resolved by the end of the year. So very fortunately, we are able to say at this time the bathrooms are all functional at Wacona, giving far more options specifically to the female students, and they will become even more functional when we actually, the last step is putting on the doors, as two of our school committee members have experienced. If you haven't seen it, you might not fully understand, but there is shower curtains where doors should be, and we are replacing that with doors. So by the end of this year, all bathroom facilities at Wacona will be fully functional. There are some limitations due to the age of the building that certainly would be remedied with a new building, but we will have everything we are able to have in operating order. So that's been a good improvement. And I have followed up with the parent who brought the concern forward, and she was happy with the resolution. Any questions about that? It's kind of a cut and dry objective one, if you will.
So in the first paragraph, it's 14 female student restroom fixtures, right?
Yes.
It's not.
Actual bathrooms.
But, oh, is it?
No, it's actually the fixtures. You're saying it's not actual bathrooms, it's actual.
Fixtures?
Yes.
Okay. And that appears twice. All right.
Do you have any questions on those topics? Okay. The next topic is the superintendent evaluation. Just recently passed out these forms that you should all have before you. Some of you are familiar with how we move forward with this, and I'm going to explain the process anyways, just to make sure we're all clear
Did I
tonight.
cover the other concern or not?
That's what she just talked about.
Bathrooms. Do you want me to cover best case in my report or now?
Yeah.
Okay, so back up. So we covered the bathroom concerns. If you look at my report, there's a more extensive report. So what we had a concern brought to the committee about was a pretty specific concern about a subgroup of students. However, I think that the more transparent answer is that there is an overall culture concern that we do have at Nessicus right now and that we are working through. And I think I say that on behalf of Pete and Joanne. I don't think I say that without their support, and I certainly would not speak if I wasn't sure that they were in agreement. You've seen multiple sources of data that have come forward regarding this concern. We had a full comprehensive program review done this fall by the Department of Ed that had some pretty tough data to swallow, that was seeing some different things at Nessicus than they were throughout the rest of the district. We know that. There's been a lot of work done instructionally as a result of that by Mrs. Blake Davis with Mr. Falkowski and Mrs. Dowling. We know that we received some data last year from our current 9th graders who at the time were 8th graders regarding their experiences social emotionally that we had some concerns with. That we have been working to resolve. In addition to that, we do have some concerns with interactions amongst the full school community. And we do know as adults that the research shows us very clearly that how we interact and how positively we feel about our environment does directly affect the students. So I can talk to you at a very specific level about the strategies that are being put in place to work with the students. Mrs. Dowling, Mrs. Pecor, who's our Craneville Vice Principal, and Mr. Messina, who's our experienced Vice Principal at Wacona and long-term Dean, are working closely together to align their practices around student discipline and around things that are positive interventions around discipline, but student discipline, specifically when it's antisocial behavior that rises to the level of bullying. Those are absolutely concerns at Nessicus, and there are ways that we're addressing those, but it would not be fair, I don't think, or transparent to tell you that that is the main concern or cause, because these are students who are moving through other buildings fairly successfully. We do have some concerns with an overall root cause culturally, and we are on our 3rd administrative team in 3 years. Fortunately, I do not see that being a 4th administrative team next year. You have the right people on the bus, in the seats, committed to doing the work, but relationship building takes time. And I think you'll see there's some things in here that they are doing. So the parent who spoke about a subset of students who are moving on to the high school. That subset of students, Mr. Robb and Mr. Messina are more than aware of and looking forward to working with. And we're certainly looking at ways to make sure that student behavior is positive and that students are receiving consistent discipline and are receiving opportunities to restore mistakes they make, because these are young children. But at the root of it, what we're really working on is building a culture of positivity where people work together and feel that they're being heard by the right people. Our concern, mine, Mr. Falkowski's, Mrs. Dowling's, was beyond what you heard. There was a concern with 8th grade students. If you noticed, the parent indicated they've been approached by staff. And as educators, we need to work through these things together. And that to us is a root cause of a cultural concern. If you're as a staff member feeling that your recourse is to contact parents about students, there's a cultural issue that we really need to work through, because Pete and Joanne have their sleeves rolled up all day, every day, and then well after hours wanting to work through these problems, but they need to be the people who are leading the work. So a couple things are happening, and I think that Joanne and Pete would like to come back to this committee in late June to tell you about their action plan for the 18-19 school year. As you do know, they were appointed to their positions sometime around October, which is just an awesome time to find out you're the principal and vice principal of a school. But they really are going to be formulating a specific action plan for next year using all of this data. They have a consultant who they've been working with that has been doing some coaching with our entire administrative team for some time now, who will be at Nesicus all day tomorrow. And what we're really excited about is he has a full schedule of time spent with staff members, talking about the Nesicus culture, talking about how he can work to bring people together and to formulate an action plan. He'll be back 2 more times in June, and during that time they'll be doing some culture building activities and putting some specific things in place for next year. You'll also see there's some other things going on because we have internal expertise as well that we can use. So some staff members, for example, Steve Messina from Wacona will be working directly with Joanne after the seniors graduate to be aligning some of their practices stronger that work very well at Wacona. So there's a lot of things that are happening, but I think that to be transparent, it would be easy to stand here and talk to you about 8th graders and 8th graders in May and how you solve those problems, but the root cause really at this point is that we have a cultural issue that really needs to become a community that work functionally together with a consistent administrative team. So I feel very fortunate to have that team and to support them, and I think that they're doing good work, but it takes time to build the relationships to make some changes that have been needed for some time. So certainly I hope that was somewhat of a kind of summary. I actually shared with you, in the interest of transparency, exactly what was said to the staff, exactly what's going on, and you can see that there. And you'll actually see an action plan in June that has specific things in it. Not to say things haven't been happening all year long, but there is some benefit to having a year-long perspective as an administrator in a school. You have to go through different things. You have to go through the MCAS administration period. You have to go through the spring with 8th graders. You have to go through different events that happen throughout the course of the year. And these 2 individuals had to go through building a relationship with each other, which they've built a very strong relationship, and we're very fortunate that they are committed long-term to Nesicus. So that's kind of some overview, but certainly if there's questions, Pete and Joanne can speak very well as well about the work they're doing.
Are there any questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to continue on that topic. It was later last week that I was party to emails that went back and forth between the same parent and the administration on a similar but somewhat tangential topic. And I waited quietly and finally decided, after about 6 emails had gone back and forth, to basically insert myself and recommend that, the emails back and forth is not an effective communication vehicle. And I had the sense, and this is my opinion, that it was being done as a paper trail, which is also somewhat divisive, I would say, in my opinion. So that suggestion went out to the parents, and I encouraged with verbal, the face-to-face communication, which is really the only way to solve a problem that parents, students, administration, and staff are having. After that email, there was another email that came back to me, so I took it upon myself to call a parent. And I kind of wanted to make it clear that the committee needs to hear when parents or staff or administration has any concerns at any level. And when it comes to the committee, it becomes the committee's problem, and the committee, of course, is going to rely on the administration to make an assessment of the problem and try to address it. So the point there is, I try to reinforce, there's a line between what the committee does and what the superintendent does, and how we interact. And the committee's prime responsibility is hiring a superintendent, evaluating the superintendent, and then we have policy and budget. We rely on the superintendent to work with administrators in the buildings and the staff in the buildings to resolve teacher or to resolve student-parent issues. And that's kind of what the line is. So we're not going to insert ourselves with the principals, with the staff, to try to resolve again those issues at the student parent level. So I just wanted to let you know that did happen, and I'm trying to work with the parent as well to let them know that we're engaged in this problem, but really let the administration work through it, and the school committee is going to sit here and wait to hear how it turns out.
The only other thing I'd add quickly is that this is like a roller coaster of emotions when you do care so deeply about solving the problem and you get caught up in the moment. But that we have had some real honest FaceTime. Pete and Joanne have had the bulk of it with the Nessica staff, and I do think it's telling that they have kind of gone back to roll up their sleeves and work together. They know there was a meeting tonight, but obviously the meetings that are happening in the building are meeting their needs to start to have a voice. So I think that's optimistic because that's where the work should happen. So they're not always easy conversations, but they're honest conversations with the right people. So we'll report back in June where that's at with an actual plan that you'll be able to see and look at. But we do appreciate referring back the concerns because I think it's Mr. Rob that often refers to a school as, you have to sometimes have a family meeting and the family has to work out their issues and they live together every day. So we appreciate you giving that support to us.
Okay, Mr. Gazol.
Yeah, I'll just say that I continue, as I have for the last 8 years, to have families come up to me at different sporting events and other events at the schools and on school grounds. And this topic hasn't really changed, and the folks in the seat on the bus have changed, but the way we've handled it, we don't seem to have a good handle on bullying at any level at any of our schools. I'd like to see that we're having the school committees being informed at each school committee meeting on something about bullying practices and our efforts at each school committee meeting. I think it's well worth the time to see if we need to engage in further discussion about it. And I agree with Sean, I don't think we need to be in it at the building level. But I can tell you that even this week I had discussions about it. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, with one of my neighbors who has children in the elementary school concerned about coming to the middle school. So, in our community, little things like that spread like wildfire. And it's just been consistent over the last 8 years. Sean and I have both had children that went through the middle school in the last 3 or 4 years, and me for longer, more recently than Sean. And I can tell you that there's still a significant issue there.
And we will absolutely update you on that. I just don't want to be less than transparent in saying that that's the only issue. There's some root cause cultural issues going on within the staff as well that we've got to give some time to, because that does impact the students. So that's definitely an absolute part of it. We just want to be transparent. It's not the whole story.
Thank you.
And not to minimize what you said at all, because I totally agree with you, but the transition from elementary school to middle school sends parents into a dizzy, no matter where it is. It's going from a protected, cloistered environment to the big bad middle school where bad things happened. So I think in terms of making those cultural shifts, we have to just remember that it's kind of universal, and many parents feel that angst about letting go and moving on.
Yeah, I think in this case, Barbara, though, it really is parents hearing what exactly is going on, and parents standing up here for the first time in a long time and actually standing up for what they see as something that's not happening the way it should be. So no, I agree with you. I mean, that transition is a difficult one, and it's a difficult one again, I think, even from middle to high school. But there are some consistent things that happen in our community, and everybody knows who the folks are involved. We just haven't seen come up with a good way of handling it yet. So.
Anyone else? Okay, the last thing we're going to be with bullying is dismissive. To Mr. Gazzolo's point, I will say though that in my experience that I've had at the middle school as of the last 2 to 4 years anyway, is that there's always two sides of the story. I know that you hear parents want to be defending their kids to the hilt, and we're all going to agree to that as parents who are sitting at this table. And we often want to go into a one-on-one when we get calls from the administration about our kids saying that, well, it's not our kids' fault. And that's just how it is. That's the reality of how this situation is always going to be. But there is the other element, that there's the other side of the story that we always have to consider. And, you know, Junior or little Missy may not be perfect in that world. And I've run through that with my family as well. And I've had the situations where when you get the whole story, you go, oh yeah, okay, I understand. So we've got to make some adjustments at home and try to address this problem there too. So yeah, there's going to be problems in middle school. I mean, certainly, and it seems to be centered there because it's that age when the kid's endocrine system is in, you know, full overdrive, and I think we all understand that aspect of it too. I've spoken with other superintendents about this. In fact, that very same day, I spoke not only with our superintendent, but with Jake McCandless, and we had a good back and forth discussion about that. And he says, it's no different in Pittsfield. It's no different at Mount Greylock. It's no different in South County. It's no different in Lee, Lennox. And I can tell you that I've heard some situations about Lennox too, you know, based upon my family's relationships with some Lennox parents. So it's not isolated to us. And you know, I think we do a good job trying to address these issues. And I think the only thing we can do is always seek excellence and opportunities for improvement. So I don't like to go on a tirade like that, but I needed to say that. Okay, anyone else? All right, back to the evaluation. So what we have to do is have this evaluation done and turned in by the end of June. It goes to Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Most importantly, it's what our superintendent uses to try to assess her performance over the past year and make improvements moving forward, set the goals for next year. So the first one I sent you, I apologize, I used the goals from last year. I sent you an updated one. You have the updated one before you this evening. So there's 3 parts to this. If you look at the step 2 of the first page, you'll see that it wants you to go to page 4 through 7 first. So that's where we're going to go. There are 4 standards that we rate the superintendent on. Standard 1 is instructional leadership on page 4. Standard 2 is management and operations on page 5. And standard 3 on page 6 is standard 3, family and community. And then finally on page 7 is standard 4, professional culture. So what you need to do is, you'll see at the bottom they've got some examples of objective evidence that you need to rate the superintendent on all these indicators that are within those standards. For instance, on standard 1, if you go back to page 4, there's 5 indicators. So we need to assess either unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, or exemplary. The reason proficient is shaded there is because basically when DESE came out with this back in 2013, I believe, they said everyone should be getting no higher than proficient because they're trying to get a gauge of how this instrument was working. And by the way, this is consistent with the teacher's evaluation, other administrators' evaluation. This committee adopted this standard with no changes back in 2013. So this is where we need to go, and then you put down an overall rating for that standard, and you fill in any comments that you want to put in there to reinforce what your ratings are. You do that for all four standards. You then come back based upon the summary for each of those 4 standards, and you will fill in on page 1, step 2. So just reflect on step 2 what your final rating was for each one of those standards. And then from step 2, you'll move to your overall evaluation for the superintendent, which is again one of those 4 scores. Proceeding on to that, what was the impact on student learning for the evaluation? For the superintendent's performance, you assess it as low, moderate, or high. And then finally, the goals, which are indicated on page 3. Rate one of those goals, and the categories, rate each one of those 4 goals, either as did not meet some progress, significant progress, met, or exceeded. Okay? And then bring that back to page 1 for the assessment of the goals. With all that, it's a little bit of work, but I'll ask that the committee send these back to me either electronically or hard copy to Mr. Bueno by June 15th. That way I can have everything compiled for the assessment that will be at the last school committee meeting in June. What I do is I take that and I basically put it all on a spreadsheet. Many of you have seen the spreadsheet. And based upon the majority of any of these categories or ratings, that's what goes in for the final. And then that gets summed up and made as a final, the final evaluation rating that we'll give the superintendent and vote upon on that date. So I know that's a lot to digest. Those of you who have seen this before, it's a little easier, it's routine. But if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email, call me at home. I think you should all have my number, and we'll go from there. Any questions this evening?
No questions, but just to remind people that if you're going to give any kind of feedback, actually comments, put context around that. So make sure you fill in the comments to put context around how you grade, especially if you do something that's below par, for sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything unless you put context in it. So make sure you add comments.
All the comments are taken and given to the superintendent. They're given back to you as the package. This is public information. Each of your individual assessments is public information. And then, of course, the final rating is public information. So that's all I have on that. Anyone else? Okay. Going on with communications, again, we have the November 2018 school committee election. Those whose seats are up for election. We have 3 more town meetings. We've gone through 4, and we have 3 of the 4 towns haven't passed the budget. Thank you to the superintendent for keeping us up to date on that. And at this moment, we'll move on to subcommittee reports and recommendations. First, we have curriculum. Dr. Kraft-Reese.
Yes, we met today prior to the meeting here, and Leslie Blake Davis was good enough to spend some time talking to us about the Eureka math program, and she's pretty excited about it. And after we heard about it, I think we're pretty excited about it too. It's a program that is going to be adopted for grades 6 through 8 if we recommend it. And it was brought to her attention by a teacher at the middle school, and she did some visitations at Bourne and Groton Dunstable, am I saying it correctly? And saw it in action. And she looked at it through the lens of UDL, and certainly at Groton Dunstable, where Kate Novick is assistant superintendent, it's very prevalent. She thinks that it's more of a problem-solving approach, and it's authentic and encourages higher order thinking. Teachers will be able to offer choices to students, and there's there wasn't an online component initially, but now there is an online component, so she's very pleased with that. And still suggested that teachers might use Desmos and Khan Academy for reinforcement of some of the skills. She gave us some literature from edreports.org that rated the program, and of all of the math programs around that are available, it scored incredibly high, 13 out of 14 on one, and 14 out of 14 on all the other subtests. So I was very familiar with another program, Everyday Math, and it scored poorly, and that's how I sort of rated it as well, so I felt good about the scoring system. Does anybody have anything else that they want to add? Rick was there, Bonnie, Nicole, and Ellen? No? Okay. Okay, so with that in mind, we agreed as a committee that we'd like to go forward with it. So we have resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee approve Eureka as the 6-8 mathematics curriculum as recommended by the curriculum subcommittee. Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Eureka as the 6-8 mathematics curriculum. Is there any discussion?
Is there any increase in cost with this new program?
I think Leslie mentioned that the cost of the program completely was a little less than other programs that she's looked at, that there's professional development that goes along with it. And I kind of like the professional development that isn't the one-stop, coming in and giving you the information about it, but they come back and they talk to you and ask you to reflect on it and how can they help you. So it's a two-pronged professional development, and I think that's probably worth the money Because you have to have the teachers on board and teaching it correctly, and I think that the program design will allow for that.
Basically, have we budgeted?
Yes, so we budgeted for math curriculums, but we were really kind of trying to decide between two, and they were not fitting our needs, and we kind of had this dark horse of Eureka that really has come forward that meets our needs and happens to be more cost effective, so we budgeted a little bit more than we need, but we also had budgeted, Melissa did an increase in the professional development line for next year, and I think that it'll offset there because we will use more professional development because I think it's an excellent program, it's a quality program, it is a complex program to teach. So we do need to have some professional development, but the math curriculum that was budgeted for was slightly higher.
When was the last time this was overhauled? We're always hearing how we get these new, I hate to say it, fangled things. I mean, how long do they go, are they in existence for? When was the last one that was put in place?
For middle school?
Or, yeah, right, you know, we're replacing this, we're gonna replace something with this, correct?
We haven't had an aligned middle school math curriculum in my time here. We have had a K-6 curriculum that started with Debbie at Kittredge and then rolled out fully, which is our Envisions program that started probably my second year here that we do have in place fully in K-5. But we have had more, I don't want to use the word piecemeal, but it would probably be the honest word, if I'm using the right word. Leslie could find a better word, but piecemeal curriculums in the middle school for quite some time in 7th and 8th. It predates me.
And we also know that there's a need at the middle school for a comprehensive math program that's going to align with the standards. So I think the timing was right to search for a program that would better meet our needs. The other thing that impressed me too was that in the schools and districts that have used this program, their scores have improved and the achievement gap has lessened. So those are all really good factors.
Mr. Locketel?
What other districts in the county or
Not in the
nearby?
county, but Bourne District, which Leslie said is pretty reflective of our district, and also Groton, Dunstable are using it. Were there others, Leslie, that you're aware of?
Those are the two that I looked at because I wanted to look at districts that were more like ours. And the other piece that I wanted to look at very closely was closing the achievement gap, because that's a goal of ours. So that's a statistic that I looked at pretty closely.
So Sean had a good question, just to clarify. When we say more like ours, we're looking for districts of similar size and similar socioeconomic that have had a similar challenge, and our challenge has been a persistent achievement gap between students with disabilities and students without, as well as students really not pushing into that upper category into advanced. And Bourne and Groton and Dunstable, data-wise, come out very similar to us, and they've been more successful than us to date in closing the achievement gap. I do believe also, Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, why do I believe New York City Public Schools uses Eureka?
There are several districts in New York that do use Eureka because Eureka was originally, it originally came out of an initiative in New York State called Engage New York. So it was actually, it was grant funded. A group of individuals were grant funded to actually come up with a very high quality math program that could be offered to districts in the state of New York for free. So a lot of the resources most of the resources are actually, you can view them online. And they had a lot of success with it. And then from there, it was purchased by a company called Great Minds. And then it became, it's a program that's fairly progressive, fairly innovative. So we're kind of out at the, I feel like we're sort of at the forefront of Berkshire County in that we're looking at this math program.
Yeah, we heard that we were at the forefront of the last one that came before us as well.
Envisions. And we're keeping with that one, K-5. It's a little bit more canned.
Well, it wasn't the math ones. I don't know.
Oh, Teachers College, probably. Yeah. You're right, units of study that Leslie started at Becca Washington.
We do have opportunities for sharing professional development with other districts, and we have students that move between districts. So I wouldn't expect it would be #1 criteria, but I think it should be considered when we select a curriculum.
Yeah, so this program is very closely aligned with the standards. So I would say that was a key criteria, that it's very closely aligned with the standards. As a matter of fact, it goes above and beyond the standards. So I would hope that any of our students, once we're sort of firmly established with this program, that they would be able to go anywhere, that they would have a firm grasp of the expectations for all grade levels.
Because you did work very closely with Judy Rush from Pittsfield, who was looking at big ideas, but it was big ideas or Go Math?
Mm-hmm.
Big ideas.
Big ideas, Go Math, yeah. Go Math.
Yeah, we were hitting a ceiling too soon with it, so we didn't go with something below, but we went with something that we felt went past what that curriculum would offer us.
What Leslie had said in subcommittee was that what other programs were offering were more segmented and sort of and programs that once everyone has to finish this one segment before moving on to the next one, before moving on to the next one. So you sort of stunt growth of students who grasp the concepts faster, whereas this, it sort of just goes along the line of the students. So those students who don't grasp the concepts as fast can still move at their own pace, but those who can move up above and beyond can keep moving forward without having to wait for everybody else to catch up.
A question. You said it was progressive. I know doing in the Wacona, the high school, a lot of the work we were doing with the design group on 21st century learning. Does this Eureka Math, does it have any of the concepts that are, supposedly 21st century learning, the 4 C's there, cooperation?
Yes, sorry, if I might answer. The thing that Leslie kept stressing was that it's a problem-solving approach, and that's certainly something that 21st century learning embraces. So it's not just learning rote, although there is value to numerical fluency, but it's looking at things through problem solving.
Is it like projects?
Project-based, and it's also very UDL-able. Is that a word?
I mean, typically with math programs, what I'll see is you start out with very, as Barbara was describing, very rote kinds of activities, and then by the time you get to the end, it's the problem-solving section. And what I really like about Eureka is it begins with problem solving from the very beginning, and it also has a variety of strategies for problem solving. The way it's laid out is very simply laid out, but it'll offer visuals for students who very much need a visual. But the student doesn't necessarily have to use the visual if they don't need the visual. It'll offer maybe a problem about decimals, but it might have the fraction equivalent. So it really approaches it from the standpoint of very different learning styles, and students can use what they need, and they don't need to necessarily use the components that they don't need. But the other component I was explaining to the committee is you can, is that some of the visuals, like if you're in 5th or 6th grade, are very sophisticated. So it's not like you're saying, oh, I'm going to give you these little manipulatives. I'm not going to give you something that's going to make you feel like you need extra support. It's a very sophisticated form of scaffolding the learning for those students. So from that standpoint, I have to say I did like it, because I feel like it's meeting the needs of all students, and I think that's probably part of the reason that the districts that I looked at are seeing they're closing their achievement gaps, because students are going to be more motivated by that.
Is there anything in this program or this thing that will help the parents? Because you lost me.
Yes,
But I mean, this is way probably above what I could ever teach my kids, and thank God I don't have to do it. But this is a big thing with parents. Is you get to a point where you can't help your kid do their homework.
Right.
Is there going to be things online to help the parent help the child do their homework?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I was a little hesitant until they had an online component, because I feel like that's a really important part of communication. But one of the things, the committee asked the same question, so it's an excellent question. One of the things I said to them is that will be part of my job over the summer, is to make sure I have, I have meetings set up with families from Nessicus, so that they can come and talk to me about the program, that they can talk to teachers about the program, and additionally that I have multiple means of representation for this math program. So I have hard copies of information going home, but also it's also part of my job to have an online component that does, in a very user-friendly way, explain the program itself. I haven't done that yet, but I wanted to honor the process and the adoption process, but I will definitely do that.
And there is a parent resource.
There's a parent
available.
resource, yes.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving Eureka as the 6 to 8 mathematics curriculum indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, then we went on to field trips, and there's an overnight field trip for the Wacona Latin Club to Rhode Island, December 3rd through the 5th, 2018. And Mr. Bradshaw will be taking, let me see, paperwork here, taking approximately 60 students, and it's a Monday to a Wednesday, and grades 9 through 12. They're going to a very full program, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They start at 6:15 a.m. and they go through till 10:30 at night, so I'm exhausted just reading their itinerary. And the committee would like to move it forward. So be it resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee approve an overnight field trip for the Wacona Latin students to Rhode Island, December 3rd through 5th, 2018, as recommended by the Curriculum Subcommittee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve an overnight field trip for the Wacona Latin Club to Rhode Island, December 3rd through 5th, 2018. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Okay, and we also had a field trip in the cheerleaders. This is over the summer, Friday, July 27th to Monday, July 30th. It's at Westfield State College, and this is the 8th year that they've done this, or 7th, I'm sorry. This is their 7th consecutive year. Again, they outlined a pretty rigorous itinerary for them. So be it resolved that the Central Berkshire School Committee approve an overnight field trip for the Wacona cheerleaders to Westfield State University, July 27th through 30th, 2018, as recommended by the Curriculum Subcommittee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve an overnight field trip for the Wacona cheerleaders to Westfield State University, July 27th through 30th, 2018. Is there any discussion?
Obviously, they made it to nationals last year, so they must be doing something.
It's because of this field.
A lot of hard work
Yes.
and a lot of fun.
Okay, anyone else? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And we don't have another meeting scheduled yet, but we will, because we're going to be talking about inclusive practices at our next meeting. But I'll let you know at the next meeting when that will be. It'll be in June.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Crabtrees? Okay, we'll move on to Finance Subcommittee.
Thank you. We had a very brief meeting tonight before the school committee meeting. The only significant item on the agenda was the review of the contract for the reappointment of legal counsel for FY 2019. Dupre Law has been our legal counsel for some time now. The contract is more or less the same, with the exception of there is a slight increase this year. After a small amount of discussion, the committee unanimously agreed to support Dupre Law as our counsel in FY19.
Okay.
We do have a motion.
Okay.
Would you mind raising?
Be it resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee appoint Dupre Law offices as General Counsel for Labor and Relations for the Central Berkshire Regional School District from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019, as recommended by the Finance Subcommittee.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for appointment of legal counsel. Is there any discussion?
What was the increase?
Yeah, what was the exact?
$75 a month.
I don't know.
Okay. Okay, seeing no further discussion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
What are we gonna get for 75?
Motion carries.
All right, the only other item is that of importance is that on May 22nd, at the next Finance Subcommittee meeting, which will be 6 p.m. at Nessicus, we'll be having PARs there for a presentation on our investments. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Are there any questions for finance? Okay, we'll move on to policy.
So I've been in contact with Mr. Hagmeyer. So we had had some trouble getting availability for a meeting. So we are meeting on June 12th at 6 o'clock in the central office, and we do have the anti-bullying policy on the agenda because there's going to be some work done between now and then by our vice principals to update that and to align their practices and to make sure it's current, as well as there was a change to the food service policy that came out that we needed to react to from MASC, and then we're going to be preparing a presentation on the strategic plan. So June 12th at central office at 6.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to personnel.
We have a negotiations scheduled for Wednesday, the 16th, with the teachers. And other than that, I have nothing to add.
No reason to enter executive session.
No.
Okay, good. Thank you. And Mr. West is not here to report for technology, but I believe they've not had a meeting.
We have not had a meeting.
Okay. And next up is the Wacona Building Project.
So we did just have a meeting and we approved the minutes that had to be certified to go with the submission to MSBA. So at this point, everything has been submitted to MSBA and we are just waiting for their comments on our educational plan. And that will really get things going because we'll have to respond to those comments with the support of the OPM from Skanska and then our design team from DRA. Their next meeting is on May 24th. There'll be a small working group meeting immediately before the full school building committee to hopefully start to look at some of those comments we expect to receive at 3 p.m. in Sean Therian's classroom. And at 4:30, the full building committee will meet. There was an edition sent out. Sean Therian is the author of this. He does a great job around the Wacona School Building Project for May. There'll be another one that comes out in the beginning of June. The other items to make note of is June 19th and June 21st, which are Tuesday and Thursday. There are going to be community evenings again. We know that's a short time frame, but the calendar we're up against puts us at MSBA in early September to bring an option forward for what the school will ultimately what will be voted on for the school to ultimately look like. So we need to get community input on those options. So those evenings, there'll be double headers again, most likely at the same venues, something like Windsor and Wacona on the 19th and Beckett and Kittredge on the 21st will be DRA. Carl, the principal from DRA, going over the options and showing how they would rate them and asking the community for their thoughts on that. So those are just some things to be aware of that are coming up. We will get way more information out about that. We just wanted to get dates on the calendar right now.
Okay, any questions?
So we're going to have building options, building possibilities on those dates.
Yes.
Do we know how many?
I believe we're at 13, Mr. Rob, 13.
We're going to see all 13 on those dates?
I don't know.
That we don't know. May 24th, we're going to talk about that though at the school building committee meeting as to will they bring all 13 forward or narrow them down first. There are some that look pretty obviously not necessarily things that would meet our needs and others that look like they would. But on the 24th, we'll ask that question.
I would think we would have crowds at those meetings. Everybody's been asking, what does it look like?
Yeah.
What does it look like?
And this literally shows you exactly what it looks like with a
3D models.
with a grading way of assessing it, like everything from like things they call temporary costs. Do you need Mr. Rob knows this so well. Do you need modulars? Do you not? To permanent costs as far as what the facilities will cost to run, and it almost grades each one as to how you would look at it. And I think that
that is available as well, or will be very shortly online from DRA, that document.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
At a minimum, they have to address the three categories that MSBA requires. One is a complete renovation of the existing building. Secondly, a renovation of the existing building plus adding to the existing building, taking away and or adding. And then finally is just going with a completely new building. So from what I recall, there's at least multiple options for each one of those categories. Most of the options that I remember seeing from weeks ago was a brand new building. And it's kind of different configurations, moving it around. The different places on the immediate Waconia property, you know, as we stated before, we did want to look at over by Nessicus as an option, but DRA pointed out that the wetlands considerations over there, we would never get past that. So that kind of got immediately thrown to the side, and we're restricted to the property that we're on, the footprint of the property that we're on.
Do you think that will have cost estimates?
Ranges, I mean, they stay in ranges, but yes.
I don't think you can have an option going forward without having the costs associated with it. So
Definitely,
we would
yeah.
need that.
Definitely, they definitely do the range, you know, they have those up there as well, and they'll start to fine tune those once the comments come back.
And they will talk about what's allowable versus what's not allowable by MSBA guidelines. That will all be broken out.
So again, like Mr. Locatell said, we expect we to have crowds, we'd love to have crowds, but any suggestions on getting the word out, we'll go through all of that next time of all of our strategies, but if you have suggestions, please do share them.
Just some feedback on the last workshops that we had is there was some confusion as to really what it was about. I think the people I was sitting with thought it was more of just a presentation, and they were pleasantly surprised that they were getting input.
Oh, okay.
And I know it went out in the letters, and I know sitting in these meetings I got it, but I don't think it was clear.
Thank you.
Going out.
Right, because people are much more likely to show up when they're not just watching something they could watch online. Because we're sharing it'll be online, but if you think you could watch it first, no, but you can. Thank you very much. That's good feedback, Nicole.
So I think it's probably important to reinforce that this will be an interactive session.
You're gonna have
Mr.
to
Council.
I just wanted to echo that, I think it's very, very important, especially when people are considering what the options are, to make it very clear that people see all the designs from basic to renovate to new, and that this is their time to make their voices heard. And I can't emphasize that enough. That's hopefully the way that you'll get a good turnout, is by making it very clear that this is their opportunity to say yay, yes to basic, to renovate, to new, and making their voices heard. So.
Okay. If there's nothing else on that topic, we'll move forward to superintendent's reports and recommendations.
So I think I've covered most of it over the course of the meeting. If you do have a chance, if you didn't already see in the Berkshire Eagle, 2 of our Creightonville teachers were highlighted as classrooms of the week. Really well designed. The only other thing that I'll say, because I think everything that is in here I've pretty much said, it is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I've had the opportunity to walk through each of the buildings, and it really does remind you of how lucky we are to have the educators we have in the classroom. And then I do also want to, and I'm like, it's a problem of being like 40 weeks pregnant and doing these kinds of things, acknowledge our administrative team tonight. I have had the pleasure since I've been here of working with a strong team, but this is the peak of that. I mean, this is incredible. This team here tonight wanted to be here to support Pete and Joanne. They knew Nessicus was on the agenda. They knew Leslie was presenting the math curriculum in her extremely eloquent, highly intelligent way, which was incredibly impressive, and they wanted to be here for that, and there is a lot going on for all of them, professionally and personally. You see when I'm doing the Waconia School Building Project, I'm looking at Mr. Rob, and he's not avoiding eye contact, he's looking back. Not that he must have, but in general, when when you're in this seat, sometimes everyone's like, oh, that's you. That's not how this operates. And if I needed anything from any of them throughout the course of this report, I am so fortunate, Melissa and Greg as well, but to have a team that that is so invested in each other's success and the success of the kids, and has such a district-wide focus. So I do just want to acknowledge that they are here tonight, and they are here. They work with me constantly, and just are an incredible team. So I thank you guys for all you do and for being here. That's all.
Did you want to hear this? Have a follow-on to the next discussion?
I think I went through it all, the Steve and the consultant and all of that.
All right.
If anyone has any questions about any of it, I did highlight, we did what do we, see, I'm going to do it again, Mr. Rob. What do we call that? The decision day?
Oh, yeah, May 1st.
Yes. I was like, the decision day, and everyone who's college gear fit wore it. Mine will fit next year. But we did that, and that's become more of a district-wide event. Mr. Rob has a lot of those kinds of things that the other administrators have supported, having students walk through all the schools. So today they were all out together, and Beckett Washington observing classrooms and giving Mary Kay feedback on instruction. So it's just really become quite a cohesive team that really takes a district-wide approach, and to have this deep of resources for each building is far more than any of us could do on our own. So thank you guys for being here.
Okay. Again, the superintendent's note of the senior activity week, and I'll just note May 27th coming up soon is the senior prom night in Hancock-Shaker Village. Thursday, May 31st is class night at 7 p.m. at Wacona in the gymnasium. Friday, June 1st, 2018 is the senior assembly, and then Sunday the graduation is at 1 o'clock, and that's on June 3rd.
Yes, and join us at 12:15 if you can. We do like a little coffee hour before. The administrative team has been there the last 3 years, and I think it's a nice way to kind of send off the kids from their full time with us. Many of them have been here for quite some time.
Okay. The superintendent has no personnel changes to note, and I'm not familiar, the chair's not familiar with any old business. And under new business, does anyone have anything they want to bring forward to the committee? Mr. Howell.
Anybody who's read the paper the last couple of days, Great Barrington is going to put in effect a ban on single-use water bottles. I know we've talked in the past that Wacona's got a couple of water fountains that allows you to fill up your water bottles. Nessicus has at least one, I thought, and I think Kittredge has one. Can we have a report on where we stand as far as getting the other schools fitted? Because eventually it's going to come here, and you know, it's not a bad thing to get rid of these stupid things. I think get rid of the nip bottles. I think the whole town of Dalton would be better looking, but you know, it's a start. So you know, we could have a report on where we stand as far as I know. A couple of years ago, we thought about doing that and talked about doing that. So.
I'll do that. I'll put it on. The only thing the chair wanted to bring to the committee's attention is, as part of the warrants packet that we have, we did receive a letter from a member of the Cummington Ad Hoc Education Committee. So they're expressing their frustration, and we're going to make this a topic at the next school committee meeting in 2 weeks. So we'll discuss that then and determine a path forward. So is there any remarks for the good of the committee at this time? Okay, entertain adjournment. Motion for adjournment. Okay. Second. Motion second. All those in favor? Any not? Okay, this meeting stands adjourned at 8:03.